through through the slides in this remaining 10 minutes. I'm not going to explain everything because, well, we have the book, but I'm going to the most general aspects, such as the research questions, what model is there, some of the theories that are behind, and some of the results and the main conclusions. So basically, the questions that led my book, my PhD thesis when I did it, was why are historical Catholic countries and regions generally more corrupt and less competitive than historical Protestant territories? And how has the institutionalization of religion influenced the prosperity of countries in Europe and the Americas? And here is an important research model that is like one of the results of my research. So I'm basically claiming that prosperity, which is on the right side of the equation, is a result of basically three main factors, which are culture, the culture of different countries and societies, the institutions, and in the midst of culture and institution is religion. So religion is defining institutions, religion is part of culture, and the interaction between these three factors has different outcomes regarding prosperity. Also, and very importantly, the environment and geography is an important factor that also has produces outcomes in prosperity and corruption. And there are also other values, so I'm not claiming that these are the only ones, but my models have shown that the most important factors to trigger corruption or transparency or prosperity within countries in Europe and the Americas are these four. So culture, and within culture, religion, institutions, within institutions, religion, and also environment and geography. Here is just to show you, interestingly, that when I was doing my research, that we have, like, precisely in the Americas, the countries with highest levels of corruption or with lowest transparency are Venezuela, Paraguay, and Honduras. Also, at the same time, the countries with the highest homicide rates in the Americas are Honduras and Venezuela there, El Salvador, Central America. And precisely at the bottom, we see countries with the highest proportions of population of Roman Catholics in the Americas. And then we find the same countries such as Honduras, Venezuela, etc. So there is like a correlation between high homicides, high corruption, and also a high influence of Roman Catholicism. Interestingly, what we watch in the video, and also when we talk about the research question, the institutionalization of religion is very important, and not many people talk about that. People tend to think about the people just choose religion freely, but the institutionalization of religion has had more long-lasting effects, and precisely the population that are religious, let's say Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, for example, are responding to that institutionalization of religion. Although people tend to think they are free to choose, but they respond to a big extent to this institutionalization of religion in the countries that they are from. In fact, as a matter of fact, most of religious people, when being asked why they believe what they believe, they tend to think because my parents taught me that way. So it has been like a traditional effect, not just like we are critical about what we believe, but because we inherit that. On another contrasting graph, here we find like the social progress in the Americas, and then the countries with highest social progress are Canada, United States, and Uruguay, Chile as well. So Canada and United States, so both with Protestant strong Protestant influence, and Uruguay and Chile are the countries, the most secular countries in Latin America, actually the countries with the lowest influence of the Roman Catholic Church, which is also very interesting as well. Here in this map, we see just basically the transparency. So the countries in yellow, the ones that are with these circles, are the countries with the lowest corruption, in fact, in the world. So North America, Northern Europe, Australia, all of them influenced by Protestantism, the English law, common law, also is a very important one, and the rest of the world basically with very high levels of corruption. So not only Latin America, but also Africa, Russia, Asia, etc. And this is very long-standing. So this data actually has been there for decades, and in many cases, actually, many authors have found by proxies that the data on development, like actually how countries develop, it hasn't been that different 1 century ago. So it's very stable, those indicators of development and even corruption. Actually, they are very stable in decades. Homicide rates, so Latin America has the highest homicide rates in the world, and even higher than Africa and Asia. And so part of it is explained with the cultural influence and precisely the inequalities that are perpetuated from centuries, which has been from colonial times, Catholic Church and the Hispanic regime, which introduced Catholicism. So this is data from 2023, in fact, and very stable as well. So Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, and Central America with the highest murder rates in the world. South Africa is as well there. And here we see competitiveness. So the blue countries are the most competitive ones. So once again, Northern Europe, Australia, North America, and in South America, we see Chile basically as only perhaps the most competitive of those ones. This map of religion, which has been there like for many years as well, where we see what I'm talking about, illustrates like Protestantism mostly in Northern Europe, North America, Roman Catholicism in Latin America. So a little bit about what are the theories behind explaining this kind of phenomenon. We have the institutions theory, when there's a book like called Why Nations Fail, and they say like basically what explains that countries are developed or less corrupt is the institutions, how strong the institutions they are. So the institutions in the United States are stronger than in Mexico. That's why they explain why, for example, in El Paso, which is a city shared by the United States and Mexico, the American part is developed by the institutions of the United States, and the Mexican part is poor and corrupt. And they say it's basically institutions, not culture, is what they say. But my criticism is behind the institutions, there are people. We cannot just say that the institutions per se are doing well or not, but the institutions are created by people, and it has a strong influence of religion that we cannot neglect. In fact, law has a strong influence has been influenced strongly by religion by immemorial times. There's another theory which is called the world systems theory, and which leads also to the dependency theory, and then claiming that countries are interdependent, and the countries in the north are the ones who developed, and the ones in the south don't develop because they are too far away from the north. But this is again strongly criticized, although this is the most accepted theory by the United Nations, in fact. Even promoted by the United Nations. And then we have the cultural dimensions theory, which Hofstede, and then we got Max Weber, the Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism, which, I mean, Weber, basically, I'm going to, in a nutshell, say what Weber says. Basically, Catholics are, Protestants have ethic of work ethic, and Catholics are more lazy, so to say. That's what Weber more or less. I mean, it's a reductionist way to see Weber, but this I don't agree completely with that, because it's much more than that. It's not a people's choice. It's more the institutional influence, what I'm claiming. And then it's the environment and geography, such as Sachs saying that the countries that are in the equator uh, tend to be poorer and more corrupt, precisely because they have an abundance of resource that led them to be more corrupt, such as Nigeria with the oil, Venezuela with the oil, etc., etc. Well, it has a grain of truth, and the problem of those theories is that each of those authors are claiming that only the institutions, for example, or only the culture, or only the environment explain all. But in my book, precisely what I claim and I prove empirically is that actually there are all of those factors interact like in a puzzle. But this theory was not built until that time, and that was the research gap. And that's why my book has bring all those theories and prove those theories together. And then we have like macro, like quantitative 65 countries. And then in the micro, I did qualitative analysis of only 4 countries, such as Uruguay, Colombia, Switzerland, and Cuba. Those were the 4 countries that I used. Some of the here are some of the theories and the quantitative studies that I've got, and basically here is the results. So Protestantism is one of those theories that has been, or not theories, but one of the reasons that explain the most of the variation. So countries with higher Protestantism have higher development indicators. So transparency is directly related to proportion of Protestants in Europe and the Americas, basically. And also here we find in this graph as well that high competitiveness is highly related to Protestant religion and Protestant in the population, and also has a positive impact on competitiveness. And on the contrast, on the right side, the combination of concordance with the Catholic Roman See and also population, Catholic population, decreases competitiveness, and also the Orthodox religion as well. So in the end, we have that no state religion has positive effect on competitiveness, and also that German, English, and Scandinavian language and legal origins has a positive influence on countries' performance. We see here in this slide that basically that all the world has been influenced by these legal origins, basically English, French, German, Scandinavian, and socialist. So the countries that were lucky to have like the English legal origins have higher levels of development. The ones who got French, for example, were after the French Revolution, they were successful in Europe, but in Latin America, not so much, because precisely the institutional influence that the Vatican had with those concordats. Then we have these 4 case studies with Switzerland. Very interestingly, the Catholic cantons are the least competitive, and in the Protestant cantons, they are the most competitive ones within Switzerland, and Switzerland being one of the most competitive countries in the world. In Uruguay, I have already said that Uruguay is the highest, has the highest levels of social progress in Latin America, and precisely one of the least influenced by the Catholic Church. In Cuba, we have like mixed results. So the anti-clerical elements of the Cuban Revolution helped Cuba to succeed, but they ended up by inviting the Catholic Church once again to influence their development, and they ended up to persecute one of the countries that persecute most Christians in the world. In fact, along with Mexico and Colombia in the Western Hemisphere, they are the only ones who persecute, who have high levels of persecutions of Christians. And Colombia, I have said, has very high levels of corruption, one of the most inequitable countries in the world, and very dominant Roman Catholic Church. And the liberal attempts failed until we had the constitution in 1991, where actually is very new, the freedom of religion that we had after. Before 1991, there was no freedom of religion, at least written in the paper, in the constitution. So basically, with this, I conclude that the institutional influence of religion has been more decisive than the cultural effect of religion. And these main factors are the ones who are decisive to competitiveness: high environment performance, German legal origins, and the absence of French legal origins and a concordat with the Roman Catholic Church, and also the absence of a socialist legal tradition and low proportions of the Roman Catholic or Orthodoxy in the population. Once again, the book is there ready to download, and this is the QR code or the link. You can download it for free because it's an open access book. And so thank you very much for your patience. And of course, I remain open for questions. This is my email, my institutional email address. Thank you once again.